One of the main storylines of this Mets offseason and from a lot of Mets Twitter has been to trade Jeff McNeil. I am joined by a guy who, other than needing a Windows update, recently made a video 3 ways the Mets could move on from Jeff McNeil. And if you know me, you know that Jeff McNeil is my favorite player, and I'm not really a fan of that. So in this video, we're going to do a nice, calm, civil debate on reasons for the Mets to keep and to move on from Jeff McNeil to see if we could sway the other person in any type of way. I'll give my opinions and my whole segment first, and then I will let Andrew have his turn, and we will have questions for each other at the end. If you guys like this kind of video, a bit of a collab, a debate, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below. What are your thoughts on Jeff McNeil? Should the Mets trade him, or should they try to, hope for a bounce back and keep him? And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Andrew Acevedo, the All Elite Rhino. I will have the link to his Jeff McNeil video, his channel, the Mets Weekly channel. If you haven't subscribed to that, do that, and all the other Mets Weekly content creators. So let's talk about Jeff McNeil. This has been, with the lockout, this has been what everyone's been talking about so much, and it keeps getting brought up. And the main reason why people bring it up is because of a story that was brought up so much later than when it actually happened. And a lot of this whole, we have to move on from Jeff McNeil has to do with this whole Francisco Lindor raccoon, whatever nonsense, the dispute that they had in the dugout, which alleged that, Francisco Lindor put his hand around Jeff McNeil's throat. And now people think that Jeff McNeil is this bad guy and they have to move on from him because the team has Francisco Lindor. And I personally, I'm not a believer in that. I think that fights happen on teams. If we look at other sports, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, fights happen on teams. I mean, the guys have arguments. It's a very competitive sport. Jeff McNeil, as we're going to get to, is an extremely competitive guy. So I think they were just having a big dispute, and I think that they got over it. I think that there are Met fans, some in particular, that are holding a bigger grudge over this argument than the two actual guys involved in it are. And people have this kind of concept that because Jeff McNeil had this bad year, which I'm not going to deny, it was a bad year. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, I could defend it. I can make excuses. One of the main ones that I think his hamstring definitely bothered him. He had to change his stance after he pulled that hamstring in Tampa Bay. The Mets pushed him more than they should have. And Luis Rojas, at multiple points during the season from that point on, said, we don't want another McNeil situation where we're pushing a guy to play when he really shouldn't. And ever since then, McNeil had to rechange his stance. He moved to another position, no bias thing. So there was a lot that went on to it. But obviously, Jeff McNeil had a bad year. But that doesn't mean that necessarily this is Jeff McNeil, that all of a sudden Jeff McNeil is a bad player. I think people forget just how good this guy was. I mean, you don't come into Major League Baseball and right away, as an old man, call whatever you want, have an above 300 average and then continue to do that the year after that in 2019. And then people say, oh, well, McNeil, he was only good in the first half of 2019. He hit for power in the second half. I mean, there was a stretch where Jeff McNeil was the leadoff hitter in August, and game after game was hitting a leadoff home run off the fastball. He was fastball hunting, leading games off. Mets start up 1-0. And people at that time weren't saying, oh, McNeil's playing bad. He's having a bad second half. Like, oh, look at Jeff. He's hitting homers. We're winning, things like that. And even with that bad second half, he still finished with a really good year, regular statistic-wise. Then 2020, he gets off to a bad start, but gets so hot that he still was able to put together a good 2020 season. So I just think that this year was a bit of an admiration. The people could just put the Lindor stuff to the side and just let Jeff McNeil be the guy that he is and be the player that he is. He'll perform perfectly fine. And I'm not saying he's going to automatically bat over 300, that he's going to win a batting title, but he's going to be way better than the guy we saw this year. And the only reason why I personally, if I ever were to move Jeff McNeil, and the only reason why the Mets should move on would be to get pitching. Andrew could talk about all the guys that they could do. He could go into the hypothetical trades they can make. But I think that the Mets, it's unfortunate that this is the route they have to go in order to get starting pitching, because when you look at the market right now in the starting pitching market, what guys are really great fits? I mean, some people might prefer Carlos Rondon. Others don't because of his elbow situation. I mean, does that health scare you? Does the consistency in Carlos Rondon scare you? I mean, this is the first time we're talking about him as this marquee pitcher. I mean, is Yusei Kikuchi a huge upgrade? Is Danny Duffy a huge upgrade? I mean, Andrew likes him, but it's like by default, because the Mets need to upgrade this rotation is way too big of a question mark. There's a scenario where the Mets rotation is good, but I wouldn't count on that. Walker struggles, Carrasco struggles. you can't rely on a rookie as your number 5 star McGill, even as good as he pitched. Some people think he's the next Jacob deGrom. We'll see. I mean, let's not do that based off rookie season. Look what happened with David Peterson. And I just don't think that it's smart to move on from McNeil after you lost Javi Baez, because you bring in Eduardo Escobar, and it's like, how much better of your team are you making? I'm the biggest Eduardo Escobar fan you're going to find. But I'm not going to say that just exchanging McNeil for Escobar automatically makes the Mets better. I think there's a much better chance of McNeil bouncing back to the guy that he was prior to 2021 than Eduardo Escobar automatically being a good Met, especially if they put him under the expectations of, okay, you are Jeff McNeil's replacement. Jason McCann was treated that, oh, you're the next JT Realmuto. You have to be JT Realmuto. Gave him these expectations that really were unfair, and he never could match up to it. So I hope Escobar is not in that same position. And people think, oh, well, the Mets are just going to sign Chris Bryant, and then they can move on from Jeff McNeil. If that does happen, I'm okay with it. But we have to look at it as of right now. The Mets have not done that. And if they didn't bring back Baez, who was good as a Met, cost less than Chris Bryant, I don't see why they will. So, Andrew, tell us the other side of the story.
Here's the deal with Jeff McNeil. Obviously, like you said, the locker room issues, if they're maybe being exaggerated, but there's still an issue. Even it could be the tiniest thing, but there's still going to be somewhat, I guess, some friction. If you look at some of the highlights going past the season with, let's say Alonso hits a homer and he's like, Francisco, like, patting on, I think it was in Philadelphia, Lindor's scratching on McNeil, and McNeil wants to throw a right hand. Like, there's still a little bit, it might not be big tension, but there's something there. Is it a big thing? Here's the main thing, how I see it and why he needs to be moved, is this core, and I'm just talking strictly offensively. Pete Alonso, Michael Conforto, Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis, and Dom Smith. Those 5 guys. The core has won nothing. The best thing that core has done, 86-win season. Yes, is that McNeil's fault? No, it is not. But Jeff McNeil is a very productive player. Do I think if you move Jeff McNeil, he'll go on to Cincinnati, Oakland, wherever he gets moved, and go back to being Jeff McNeil? There's a good chance of that. But for this move specifically, it's not because of, oh, he's a bad player. He's a good player. This is like a move to change the core, because obviously now we have a new core. You got Marte in here now. Obviously, Alonso and Nemo are the 2 kind of standing pat members of the last core moving to this core. But now you got your Martes, your Escobars, obviously now Scherzer with Jake. To move McNeil, it's not a point of, oh, you're trying to subtract. Obviously, it's going to be subtraction anyway, depending on what you get back. If you can get back a Luis Castillo, maybe we go crazy and, maybe Shane Bieber or any pitcher. Obviously, Bieber's more unrealistic, but somebody like that. A pitcher is more valuable to this team right now who is trying to win a World Series as McNeil is. Yes, he's a second baseman, and you also brought in Eduardo Escobar, who can be the Jeff McNeil role. And like you said, you're the biggest Eduardo Escobar fan and Jeff McNeil fan. So, but for the Mets role, McNeil's a great on-base guy. But what if the Mets all they've brought in this year is on-base guys? Eddie Escobar can be that RBI guy to replace second base for McNeil. And then, yes, could they go out and sign Bryant? Maybe they go out and, Chapman. Or guess what? Maybe Brett Beatty. Yes, it's Andrew Acevedo video. Brett Beatty has to find a way to get brought up in there. Maybe Beatty comes in and plays third. But yes, do you want to bank on a rookie? Of course not. But I expect the Mets to get another bat, most likely playing third base. So now you're stuck with the Cano contract. As much as we hate it, he's going to get playing time. You have Eddie Escobar now, who can play the second base, can play some outfield, can play some third. So now McNeil is kind of expendable, and he has a high trade value because if you've seen the reports, teams are valuing his 19, 18, and 20 season more than they're valuing the 2021 season. So you're still going to get high value for Jeff McNeil. It's an expense. It's an extra option if you bring in a third base. Obviously, this all depends on going out and adding a third baseman. But then McNeil becomes a high value trade chip, higher than JD, higher than Dom, where you can go out and get a big time piece if you're trying to win the World Series in the next 2 to 3 years. Will McNeil be a very productive player? Could he easily bounce back? 100%. But this is a move for kind of cleaning out the clubhouse, like Stroman's, like Baez have been moved on. Conforto is just that quick, moving that core on. McNeil is an expendable piece, obviously, if you get a third baseman. If they don't make that move, I don't trade Jeff McNeil. But obviously, if they get that bat to play third base or whatever other position, maybe it's second base, maybe they go out and get a Ketel Marte, go crazy, and then Eddie plays third. But as long as they get the bat to play either second or third, it makes McNeil kind of an expendable, but a very valuable expendable piece to add to this team.
Now, there's two questions I have. Number one, the Mets, I think if you trade McNeil, you have to get a pitcher. Because like you said, like this team needs a pitcher. That's their main priority right now. But I think that the assumption that no matter what, they are going to get McNeil replacement, I don't think that's really realistic. This team is number one in payroll. So I think that if Met fans are having the expectation, like, listen, they're going to add Chris Bryant, they're going to add a big contract, even if it's via trade, even if it is, I don't know, Suarez, whoever the guy is, name whoever you want, Donaldson, like you mentioned, you're asking a lot for a team that has the number one payroll, obviously with the uncertainty of what the new CBA penalties are even going to be for a team that's exceeded the luxury tax. I wouldn't bank on that. I'm afraid that the Mets are looking at it as like, oh, listen, well, like you said, we got Eduardo Escobar. He can move around the field. He'll replace McNeil. We added Marte. We added Canna. We're good now. That's a bit of a risk that you're just assuming that all these guys are going to fill in. And then if they don't, if let's say Escobar's not New York ready, and like you said, Jeff McNeil moves on and is really successful elsewhere, now you look like you didn't make a good decision. And one thing that drives me nuts, you mentioned it with Lindor. Francisco Lindor's tenure with the Mets has gone. The first season, obviously, it wasn't good. But what I don't like is we have to do whatever Francisco Lindor wants. If Lindor, wants to get rid of McNeil, we do it because they did with Baez. I mean, that's obvious. Francisco Lindor went to Zach Scott or Alderson, Steve Cohen, whoever it was, maybe all three of them, and said, I really want Javier Baez. Give me Baez, whatever it takes. Even got to trade away a top 10 prospect, a first-round pick. Do it. We need to get Javier Baez on this team. They did it. They listened to Lindor, and Baez isn't here anymore. We can't just do whatever Francisco Lindor wants and say, oh, okay, well, listen, we're doing whatever Lindor wants. We're automatically going to be good. That's no guarantee. I mean, Lindor, in his first year with the Mets, did not earn that right. He didn't earn that LeBron James right of get me Anthony Davis, get me this coach, get me this guy. He has not earned that yet. So as of right now, I'm not willing to just do whatever Lindor wants. And Lindor says, I don't really want to play with McNeil up the middle. And even if McNeil says, I don't really want to play Lindor up the middle, I'm like, well, listen, guys, if you want to win, you guys are going to have to get along. And I think that having Buck Showalter as the manager of this team is really going to help with all potential clubhouse problems. I think that Buck Showalter is going to come in here and establish this mindset. Everyone's has the same goal. So I would hope that Buck Showalter would not let that affect them. If it is so bad that Jeff McNeil is like, I cannot be on the same team as Lindor, I cannot be a Met anymore. If he came into whoever's office, like I said, and he said that, then okay, I understand that. It sucks. I wish they would get along. But if it's that case, and I think if it was that bad, he probably would be gone already, or they would have made the like actual replacement move by then. Until I see a deal that's like, wow, the Mets are way better, not having McNeil with the pieces that they brought in, whether that is a trade or that is a trade plus free agency. To me personally, I just don't see how it makes the team better now because, people talking about, we want to build sustained winner. I think that Jeff McNeil's skill set is something that can be sustained. It's something that can help you long term because having the positional versatility is good. He's only 29 years old, and he hasn't played a bunch of major league seasons. It's not like this guy debuted at age 19 and has 10 years of major league ball under his belt. That's not the case. He debuted rather late. Jeff McNeil's skill set, he said you want to get an RBI guy. You don't want to have a bunch of high on-base guys. But the other thing that McNeil does is not strike out. I mean, even as bad a year as he had, you could look at his baseball savant page, you look at his strikeout rate, it still was pretty good. I mean, he still was under 100 strikeouts. He's still one of the toughest guys to strike out in the whole league. And that's a skill set that is a bit of a lost art in today's game. You don't find a lot of Jeff McNeil that put down ball, don't strike out. If Jeff McNeil could just realize that he is not the most unlucky man in the world, that the whole world is not out to catch every single ball he hits, he's not playing showdown, and that everyone's going to make amazing catches. And you can see that as the season progressed, the more unlucky, whatever you want to call it, outs that McNeil got, the more frustrated he got. I mean, and it was so obvious a game in Boston where he hits a line out to left field and he's just like crouched down like, oh my God, I can't believe he caught that. He hits a foul ball. He's already like yelling mid at bat. And it's like, well, you're still in the at bat. Get back in the box and focus. So I hope he doesn't let it get to that point. And again, maybe Buck helps with that. Maybe Buck could talk to Jeff and be like, listen, Jeff, you're going to have to grow up. You have to realize that everyone's not out to get you. and not let him get to the point where it was just a downward spiral. I just don't like this whole idea that people are like so ready to give up on this guy and just think that, oh, get rid of him. He's not good anymore. It's not good anymore. If you have one bad year with all the other crap that's gone on, like I said, whether it was Lindor, whether it was the injury, you're bringing in Baez and moving McNeil to another position, that can't do well for your mental psyche. And we talked already about this guy mentally. That can't make you feel good that you were essentially replaced by somebody else and that you're not really wanted as much. Trade and what the Mets would need to give up in order to get back a good pitcher. Because, I mean, like, you're not just getting McNeil for Luis Castillo straight off.
Nope. Like I said, I think I'm going to probably put in the future video of why trading McNeil now over Ronnie Mauricio, because I've seen a lot of people, like including Frano in the group, we talked earlier about trading Mauricio. That's the guy you need to trade for pitching, where I'm trying to keep Ronnie Mauricio for the trade deadline. Because if this team has performed and all that, and it finally hits our expectations, and this team looks like potentially an 06 team where like they can go out and dominate or whatever, they have that top trade pieces. Obviously, not trading Beatty. They're not going to trade Alvarez. Beatty for the right trade, but it's very few trades that Beatty would get moved for. Obviously, Alvarez is untouchable. If you can keep Mauricio to the deadline, it gives you that big trade chip after the big draft that the Mets are going to have for 2 first-round picks plus 2 supplemental picks and the second-round picks. So you replenish the farm to have some extra. You're obviously not trading those chips, but it makes guys like, I don't think they move Vientos, but maybe if you get a top flight pitcher, maybe Ginn. I wouldn't do it. But maybe Ginn becomes a little more expendable. Obviously, Mauricio can give you the big trade chip. So with McNeil now, he has value. And I think there have been reports from the SNY and all that like teams still value McNeil highly. So yes, could he be a cornerstone to a Luis Castillo trade, or if the Rockies, which God knows what the Rockies are doing, Germán Marquez or someone like that, could he be the main major league piece? Kind of like, I hate using this trade, it's a terrible trade, but like a Nolan Arenado trade, where like Austin Gomber, main major league pieces, and then a couple of prospects. Yes, nobody's stupid enough like Colorado. It's going to cost more than whatever, the bag of chips the Rockies gave up for Nolan or the Cardinals gave up for Nolan. But that's the kind of like idea of a trade, is using McNeil as the big piece. So you can save a Mauricio. You can save, I don't think they move Vientos, but save those top flight prospects for the deadline after that draft class, and you can replenish his farm and moving this piece again to save assets for future trades. You don't have to go crazy in the offseason. I hate being the offseason champion, and so far the Mets kind of are. Maybe them or Tech. You can make your pick. I think the Mets have made more impactful moves than just the 2 Rangers moves, 3 moves, just John Gray. But I don't want to win the offseason. I want to be able to like make some trades, improve the roster. Then once we start playing games and they start playing well, you have the ability, if Steve wants to go all in at the deadline, you have more assets to move at the deadline for, let's say, Ketel Marte, Josh Hader, throw out any position of need at the deadline. The Mets have the assets able to acquire those kind of guys.
The one problem I see, though, is that when going into this season, it looked like the Mets and the Padres had won the offseason.
Yep.
That obviously wasn't the case, as both of them missed the playoffs. And then I feel like when they made the trade for Baez and gave up Pete Armstrong, who was injured, the main thing about Pete Armstrong is he's going to be a really good defensive center fielder. And I still think that is possible. Hopefully his bat's better than Juan Lagares. I mean, that's the way I evaluate Pete Armstrong. Yeah. But they already kind of did that. They looked like they won the offseason. They went all in during the trade deadline, and it still didn't work out. And if they're going after Josh Hader, I mean, I'm really concerned, because we've seen that trading one of your top 3 prospects for a relief pitcher is just so risky.
And the only reason I brought up Hader, because that's another piece that I've seen Mets Twitter. And I'm not saying, obviously, I hope Edwin is just, an above average, top 10 closer. I don't say top 3, top 12, top 10 closer. I'm not saying I'm not hoping the Mets need to trade for Josh Hader.
It is McNeil or Mauricio or Vientos, whoever it is the Mets do trade, whether it's now, next year, trade deadline, they really got to be sure, like, is this the right deal? I don't want rentals. I mean, I really don't want to see the Mets do another rental like they did with Baez. You got to do guys with years of control, like you said. I mean, Ketel Marte is probably not available yet, but I mean, at least some other guys, if they have years of control, like Luis Castillo does, that's what you should be looking for. But again, McNeil for Castillo still is going to get done, because we know that Cincinnati, the Mets were trying to get Castillo last year. Maybe like they were interested. A lot of people have been interested in Castillo since last offseason. And it just seems that from around the industry that the asking price is crazy on Luis Castillo. And I understand why, because again, a young, controllable starting pitching is going to have a ridiculous asking price. Look at what the Blue Jays did for Jose Barrios. You know, as a prospect lover in your shop, you're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But who knows? Maybe some team would be willing to fork that up for Luis Castillo. And if you're the Mets, you have to ask yourself, it's like, would you do that, Andrew?
I said in my video, if it's getting to Barrios levels, which is like, I guess the Mets and the Blue Jays farm system are like on different levels, kind of a Beatty with like Ginn. That's what in Mets terms, Austin Martin and Samoan Wood Richardson to the Blue Jays. Austin Martin's gonna be a stud. I brought him up in my video. I would trade, if it was possible, I would trade McNeil, Austin Martin straight up 1-for-1 because they're the same type of players.
I don't know if Minnesota would do that.
They're not gonna do it, but that's how I love Austin Martin. He'll maybe potentially the next couple weeks on Mets Weekly, you could be seeing some Austin Martin stuff. But again, that's just something to think about. Like obviously the Mets are not in a situation where they can do a Blue Jays trade like with the Barrios type trade. I don't want them to do that. Obviously, you make fun of me. I'm the prospect hugger, and I want this farm system great because I want it deepened so you can do what the Padres did, except do it with the right players. That's my main thing. I want this farm system bulked up. Well, I want to trade Jeff to get some high-quality prospects just to continue after this draft. So I didn't want them to sign a Correa or someone like that. Continue to build this farm system because if there's a guy we want, like, Shane Bieber, let's go crazy. Juan Soto becomes, and this is just hypothetical. Juan Soto comes available, and yes, that's not going to make the trade. But just as a hypothetical, the Mets could have the ammo with continuously building back this farm to go out and make that kind of trade. That's my thing. Yes, are there good pieces on the market right now? Yeah. Are they, I think Castillo's kind of the only big kind of, I don't think Bassett, I don't think Minaya, any of the A's guys are that. I said in my video, I think they're quality, they're upgrades, but I don't think they're game-changing. I think right now the only game-changing guy is Castillo. Potentially down the line of the deadline, let's say San Diego continues to flop, and this is a bad contract, but let's say Darvish, I'm just picking a random guy, Yu Darvish, goes back to being like prime Yu Darvish, like really good, like the Cy Young caliber 2020, yes, sticky merchant, whatever you want to call it. But let's say he gets back to that. That's the kind of move where, like, again, if he's being that, Yu Darvish isn't the best example, but like that's what I mean. I guess pitcher with more like longevity and more like productive player than Castillo, because Castillo still kind of got some question marks. He has the potential to be this number one, but really hasn't showed it besides like for a half season or two. So there's still some question marks for Castillo. Obviously, shout out to TonyMetro. Shane Bieber. Like, if let's say Cleveland continues, like, flops out, Bieber's the guy at the deadline. If he continues to pitch well, could Bieber be the guy you go out and get? So that's my thing, is you can use McNeil. You can go out and trade him for, a quality starter if it's Malley or Montas or Minaya, Bassett, whoever, or, make him a big part of the Castillo trade. Or you take McNeil and just continue to build up this farm so you can go out and make the big, like, changing Scherzer or Dodgers level trade to really get this team going.
The thing that everyone has to keep in mind is that if the Mets are to make a trade for a pitcher, whoever it is, Castillo, Bassett, whoever, you're trying to go for a number 3 pitcher or maybe even lower because you already have your top 2 in Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom. So it's like you're not like, oh, we have to get an ace. We need to go crazy to get an ace. You're trying to get like just another pretty good guy in the middle of your rotation. And Castillo, the first half of the season, I mean, he got off to a really, really rough start. So that's what we're saying, that like he still is yet to show that throughout the course of a full season is number 1 caliber, because the problem about Luis Castillo is that you're paying number 1 price. And I think the guy that you mentioned, that, I mean, right now it's unrealistic, but at some point, Shane Bieber will be available. I mean, that is the way Cleveland operates. You look at the way Cleveland's handled everybody, whether it is Mike Clevenger or all the Trevor Bauer, all the good players, especially pitchers that Cleveland develops. At some point, they will trade them. I mean, think about with Mets and Francisco Lindor. The Mets got Lindor because, hey, Lindor. All the guys, the good players that Cleveland traded away, it's because they didn't pay them. So maybe it's next year or whenever Bieber has like maybe 1 or 2 years left on his deal, Cleveland will move him. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's next year that maybe at the deadline, Cleveland's like, you know what? We're not going to re-sign Bieber. He's way too good. We're not going to give him $200 million, $300 million. And then that's where the Mets could come in there and swoop in. So if there is not a great trade available, I'd say don't do it. Like, as much as I would love for the Mets to add, one of those guys, if the trade isn't like amazing, where it's like you're giving up McNeil or Mauricio or Ginn or whoever those guys we mentioned, I would say like as much as you need a pitcher, save it for something better. Because I mean, these pieces that we're talking about, especially like Mauricio, like I always call him the golden ticket. Like you have to be like it has to be the no, like you said, the Scherzer Turner deal, where like maybe in the grand scheme of things it didn't work out for the Dodgers because they didn't win, and Scherzer obviously came to the Mets, and we'll see what happens with Trey Turner because Corey Seager left. So as of right now, all you've done in the grand scheme of things is just replace Turner with Corey Seager. I mean that, and obviously I know you love Trey Turner, but still, it's like you want to make a move that if you're trading someone like Mauricio, that it's like this is the franchise changer and this is the move that's really going to change everything for this team.
Yeah, it's just it's just the point of, again, the valuing assets for this team. Obviously, you look at the biggest asset management flop is trading our number sixth overall pick for a 35-year-old second baseman and a closer. So yes, you just hope the Ep Dog, which he's been, again, has given me no reason to doubt the Ep Dog, where he hasn't done anything stupid yet. And I think he does value it. And he even said, I don't want to trade, I got some top end flight talent. I don't want to move him. Obviously, he's probably talking Beatty, Beatty, Vientos, Alvarez. But again, I think if he sees it, and like I said, the deadline could be, and that's the big thing. Everyone thinks you have to do all the moves now. The Braves won a World Series because of a trade deadline. They were dead to water.
For pays.
Exactly.
There was no like, oh, we're trading our top 5 prospect. It was like, you know what? We're getting a bunch of under the radar guys. We're going to get, okay, Adam Duvall doesn't cost too much. Jack Pearson doesn't cost too much. Or Rosario. And then all of a sudden, all those guys went on hot streak. So the Mets don't have to put – and that's nothing they could do. They don't need to just be like, okay, let's give up these big-time guys just to get the one player. If they want to do a bunch of smaller moves to just have a whole bunch of guys contributing, especially in this year where you look at the way things are going right now, you're going to need more players than probably any other season. You're going to need a lot of different guys to step up. Even if you did get Castillo, like if somebody gets sick or hurt, like guess what? You need a bunch more pitchers. So, I mean, that's the other thing they got to keep in mind because they have this element this year that it's just going to be different than others, especially if as of right now, this looks like it's going to be another short season. Not 60 games, but short.
Yeah.
Spring training is going to be messed up. Everything is going to be thrown off a little bit. And you might have different rules, could be expanded playoffs. It's going to be universal DH. So, like, I mean, this is going to be a different year, whether we want to like it or not. So, I mean, that's another thing that the Mets have got to keep in mind when they're talking Jeff McNeil trade or any other trades prior to the season beginning.
I'll throw one more little thing just for me because I have to do it. You could keep McNeil for this year, play second. Let's say it doesn't work out. I know there's a certain, we talked about him already, certain potential shortstop / second baseman who could be a free agent next year, who could be a very nice top of the line. Imagine a Nimmo and a Trey Turner top of the lineup. And hey, you love batting average. Trey Turner won the batting title, and hey, hell of a lot, maybe defensively. I think they're both kind of bad. I think Jeff's a little maybe better defensively than Trey is at second. But you can make the argument Trey's a better overall hitter than McNeil. So, again, this is just the happy Rhino, fantasizing the best shortstop in the game coming to play second. Again, it's just a hypothetical. But, hey, it could be something to think about. Javi's a free agent in 2 years. Maybe let it again. There's options. There's options the Mets could do. Could they just keep McNeil? Could they go out and get Ketel Marte? There's so many options. And the best part is we're sitting in this lockout. We want it all to happen right now because we're stuck doing nothing. You have me doing prospect rankings because I have nothing else to talk about. And other things coming because the lockout is like we're just starving for something. So everyone's like doing a bunch of articles and trades and all that. Gonna happen. And whenever that lockout unlocks, Mets are gonna be active. This isn't where like, oh, the Mets are done. Maybe they'll go out and add a lefty. The Mets are gonna still be aggressive, and the market is gonna be devalued because everyone's gonna rush for jobs. Let's say this goes out into end of March, spring training. Let's say 2 or 3 weeks spring training, end of April opening day. That's possible scenario. Guys are going to want to get into spring training, get in the jobs, get in the money. So somebody maybe value Bryant's the value obviously is a Boris guy, but maybe Bryant's value comes down and say, hey, high AAV or maybe maybe even the 7-year deal, but then maybe a year 1 opt out or year 2 opt out. Put that in the deal. There's a million situations, and again, this isn't like the Wilpons where like, oh, we're done. The Mets and Steve again has said, flex the muscle financially, even with the number 1 payroll. They're going to get a lefty in the bullpen. You would think they're going to add another 7th inning quality another bullpen arm. Obviously, they're going to get pitching. So they're not done. Is the icing on top with third baseman? Potentially. But again, I think the Mets are going to be opportunistic, and they will continue to upgrade this roster. You just got to wait. And I know it sucks for sitting here. The Knicks suck. The Nets, I don't really care about them. Frank loves them. I don't. But, the Knicks, Rangers are the next god greatest thing. So watch them. Even though they haven't beaten the Penguins, besides this point. The Islanders suck. So the Giants and Jets suck. So I know New York sports right now, besides the Rangers, are pretty
And
pathetic.
the Yankees still have not done a single thing.
And the Yankees haven't spent a dime besides Jose Peraza.
Yeah.
And Inciarte. They signed Inciarte. So.
I mean, listen, it depends on who you ask. He has some value. I mean, especially that short right field porch.
Hey.
The Subway Series, he'll be stealing all the Mets.
Hey, you put McNeil in Yankee Stadium, the Yankees got plenty of young pitching the Mets could use, prospect-wise. And he always killed the Yankees. Again, no, it's not going to happen. Again.
It's not going to happen, but
Epdog and Cashman, I think that could – I'm not saying that specific trade, but there could be a Mets-Yankees trade potential. I'm not saying it has to be McNeil per se, but, it's just something – again, you just got to wait. You got to be patient. Yes, it sucks. Watch our content. Watch Mets Weekly. Watch hockey. It's great. And, the Islanders suck. Go watch the Rangers. They're exciting, I guess. The first place in the league. Ooh. If you're celebrating January, champions and real good teams celebrate in May and June. But, besides the point. Besides the point. So, obviously, I guess we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for Frank for coming up and asking me to do this. It's always fun. Be sure to check out Mets Weekly. Always back on Thursday. This Thursday and every Thursday. Subscribe to my Twitter. Subscribe to me, I guess, if you want to do that. Obviously, going to start putting out in the next, maybe trying to get at minimum 2 vids a week. Top 5 prospects at each position, and then the positional ranking. The big boys, the major leaguers, top 10 at each position. And let's see what they do with McNeil once that lockout hits.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, Andrew's got a lot of stuff cooking. I have some videos too. I have a video on Saturday. It's a kind of a part 2 to a video I did last year. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Hopefully we have Mets Weekly Thursday. We'll see. I'm not going to guarantee anything. Maybe we'll take a week off. We'll see. But again, thank you for coming on, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And until the next one, be safe. Obviously, be smart. Be healthy. Let's go, Mets. Please don't trade Jeff McNeil because I love him and it would make me look like a dummy. So have a good one, everyone.